Who is in the lead to win Best Actor in a movie or miniseries? Well, we really don't know either, but we're going to try to figure it out. Joining me now are Gold Derby contributing editors Amanda Spears and Riley Chow. I'm Zach Laws, and like I said, we're going to be talking about the lead actor in a miniseries or made-for-TV movie. The nominees are Bryan Cranston in All the Way, Benedict Cumberbatch in Sherlock, The Abominable Bride, Idris Elba in Luther, Cuba Gooding Jr. in The People vs. O.J. Simpson, Tom Hiddleston in The Night Manager, and Courtney B. Vance in The People vs. O.J. Simpson. So what are we thinking, team? Start with you, Amanda. Is this going to be Courtney B. Vance or Bryan Cranston? Who's out front here?
Well, here's the question I would pose for all of these where we're thinking we might see a newcomer win. When was the last time one of these categories, and for a limited series or movie, go to a breakthrough performance? In any of the categories, when was the last time you could argue a legit breakthrough performance won? Now, so that's kind of what's putting me off. Yes, he is a Tony winner, but this is the performance that kind of made us all sit up and go, who is this? Oh my gosh, this is incredible. Bryan Cranston, I think the reason why a lot of us are saying, oh, it's going to be Vance, he's won too many, they know he's, I don't think they're as sick of it as we are, because we probably care a little bit more than most of the Emmy voters. And I think they're probably just going to check the name they like the best, and that's probably going to be Bryan Cranston.
Riley, what do you think? Is it one of those two guys, or does somebody else have a chance of upsetting?
Yeah, it'll be one of those two. I think that every year at Gold Derby, we kind of get ourselves into this mindset where we take this critical favorite on a certain show. Maybe it's Allison Tolman or whoever, and we say, like the Emmys, they're watching the show, they'll recognize a great performance. But, these are the Emmys, and we did see them award Margot Martindale, so I don't think we should expect too much of them. Bryan Cranston seems exactly like the kind of performance where they open the envelope and then everybody goes like, oh, duh, why didn't I see that coming? It's Bryan Cranston. Of course he won. This is a Tony-winning performance. It has, beloved director. It's HBO, so it actually has pedigree behind it too. This is, the kind of hammy, over-the-top performance that the Emmys love. And Bryan Cranston almost won an Oscar because of Breaking Bad for a bad performance, I'll say.
Oh my God.
I mean, I think he can take another Emmy.
Right. So I'm in agreement with both of you here. I think it is going to be Bryan Cranston, although if I had a vote, I'd give it to Courtney B. Vance because I thought it was the performance of the year. Certainly the performance of this category. But you're right. I mean, he is more well-known to us than he is to people in the overall Academy. This is a breakthrough performance for a guy who's been working for decades. Bryan Cranston, this got 6 Emmys for Breaking Bad, 4 of them for acting. He won the Tony for this role. Like you said, Riley, he just got his first Oscar nomination for lead actor for Trumbo, so now he's got some movie star cred to him. And he's also a producer on the film as well, which I don't know if actors are going to take that into account when they're voting. I don't know if many of them realize that he is. Either way, I think this is that classic kind of transformative, playing a real-life character performance. But let's pose this. All the way underperformed at the Creative Arts Emmys. People vs. O.J. Simpson won 4. Is this a sign that maybe there's some overall weakness for that film, or are the Emmy voters voting for it in all of the categories that are still to come? It's up for directing as well, supporting actress for Melissa Leo, which we'll talk about a little later. What do you guys think of that?
I think if someone were to upset him, and the reason why I have Courtney B. Vance as a second is because the People vs. OJ has a lot of nominations, but I do think if we are underestimating someone, check where you have Idris Elba. Don't put him in 5th, don't put him in 6th, because if his name was called, my jaw would not be on the floor. We are talking about somebody who just won 2 SAG awards. One I could write off as just wanting people to, wanting the actors wanting to show we are diverse, we appreciate your work, but 2 shows that there is a groundswell of support for him. Now, it has kind of tapered off. Everyone's kind of calmed down from the Oscars. But I think enough people know he wasn't nominated. He was snubbed. He was nominated for everything else leading up to it. That was his only snub. So if there is some goodwill, and unlike David Oyelowo, who did this last year, he's been nominated a couple times. And it took a couple of times for Benedict Cumberbatch to finally win. So maybe he would be the one, I would say, could be the spoiler of the 2 if their votes kind of split between the 2 of them.
Right, and this is his 4th nomination for Luther. What say you about that, Riley? Do you think Idris Elba has a chance at all?
Yeah, Idris Elba, he won his 2 SAGs, and that was after he had been snubbed for the first 3 seasons of Luther altogether. So he went, from nothing, and now he is a 2-time winner. I'll just say, going back to American Crime Story versus All the Way at the Creative Arts, All the Way, yeah, it did underperform. I thought it could have won makeup, could have won prosthetic makeup, like Behind the Candelabra did a few years ago, when that one also took hairstyling. And then American Crime Story, it won a lot more than it would have, say, Under the Tape system. It won editing over Fargo. It even won that short form category that Gold Derby would theoretically compete in if we submitted ourselves. And they won Best Sound. Those sound mixers are just sheep when it comes to voting. They've, like every comedy in the last 12 years that has won series has been nominated for Best Sound. So that, American Crime Story is doing very well, but I think that what we need to remember is that the Emmys are not necessarily voting the ticket in all these categories. I mean, Max von Sydow couldn't win, and Martin Mull couldn't win. So even if they really like your show, it doesn't mean that you'll get carried along for the ride. You might lose out to a bigger name, which we saw a few times at the Creative Arts.
And I think remember this year's Golden Globes when a lot of us in the comedy film side for actress, just as an example, went, oh my God, it's going to be Amy Schumer. It's going to be Amy Schumer. I think what was really happening is we were just tired of seeing Jennifer Lawrence win. So I think that's kind of what's happening with a lot of us going, oh, he's won so many times. They're going to go for Courtney B. Vance. I don't think they're as tired of it as the people who really, really, really care. And so I think that's kind of why you see different winners at the Critics' Choice. You don't usually see like someone win 4 or 5 of those. So I think, again, we're probably just going to see them go with the name they love.
And speaking of the critics, Bryan Cranston actually got a TCA nomination for All the Way, which makes him the only performance from a movie ever to get a nomination in that category. So, we would think that the critics would be tired of Bryan Cranston, but even they're not. It's just us.
Good point. I'm not tired of Bryan Cranston. I'm always glad to see him in something. But let's have some other people win every once in a while. Amanda, you brought up Benedict Cumberbatch. He is the only person nominated who has won in this category before. And Sherlock did pick up an award at the Creative Arts Emmys. Is he in the mix at all?
I mean, after what he did in 2014, we can't say he's not in the mix. But I didn't think it was as fresh or as interesting as it was last time. I mean, this one is set in the Victorian era. I really think I have him in 5th place because I'm not crazy enough to put him in 6th. But I do think if they're going to go for someone out other than Cranston, other than Vance, it's either probably going to be Idris Elba or Cuba Gooding Jr. And the reason I say that is, even if they were under the tape system, they're not giving out sample episodes. So if someone were to just say, okay, I'm going to be fair, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to watch these. If they sit down and only watch 2 or 3 episodes of The People versus O.J. Simpson, that's the best scenario for Cuba Gooding Jr. is they only watch the 2nd episode because that is basically his big episode is the Bronco chase.
But
It didn't.
is it as good a scenario as if they just didn't watch the show at all and then they didn't see his performance? Because I feel like
I mean,
seeing
he
it.
is the only Oscar winner, so we don't know if maybe they'll default to him, but he was very good in episode 2.
Oh,
And Courtney B. Vance does not really get going until episode 4 or 5. That's
He
kind of
is
when he
the
takes it over.
Right, right. He is the only Oscar winner, and he is playing the title character. He is O.J. Simpson. And you're right, Amanda. I mean, in those first 2 episodes, especially in that second one, he is the dominant force. It really is the O.J. Simpson show. And if he were just to submit an episode, that Bronco episode would be a terrific one to submit. So if they are only watching the first couple episodes, or if they're not even watching it at all, they may just assume that Cuba is the actual lead of this show. So maybe I have him in 3rd place right now of the 6 contenders, because I think that's kind of a real scenario that they're voting for people versus O.J. Simpson. They say, I want to vote for one of these lead actors. Well, I guess Cuba's the one I want to go with because, he had the best episode.
And
What's
remember in 2014 with American Horror Story Coven, if you only watched the first 3 episodes, you can justify how Kathy Bates won. You can justify, because she's playing like someone as crazy as her character in Misery in a petticoat.
right.
And then you have a really great episode for Jessica Lange, so it makes sense how those 2 could have pulled those off if you only watch 2 or 3 of these episodes. That's kind of my thinking with that. But yeah, if they see the Cuba Gooding Jr. as O.J. Simpson and Courtney B. Vance as Johnny Cochran, they might just go for Cuba Gooding Jr. And hey, at least we'll get a good acceptance speech.
There you go. Yeah, he gave one of the most lively acceptance speeches in Oscar history, so we can only imagine. And it would be 20 years after, I think, his Oscar speech. 20 years to the day, almost. One person we did not talk about was Tom Hiddleston in The Night Manager. He's another he's another movie star. What are his chances, Riley?
well, what Tom Hiddleston has going for him is that the Emmys are really good at making bad decisions. Now,
That should be the tag if he wins in the tweet.
now the Satellites were kind of widely discredited a few years ago when they nominated The Wolf of Wall Street without actually seeing it. But that's actually no different from what the Emmys are doing these days with Margaret Martindale, which is also something that the Satellites have never done. I mean, Tom Hiddleston, he kind of listened to every line in the show, and he thought, like, how can I portray how my character would respond to that? So then you have somebody who's, like, absurdly animated, even though he's supposed to be undercover and menacing. Yes. Any thoughts on Tom Hiddleston?
Amanda, you were giggling a little bit. What do you think?
I mean, we don't live in a bubble, so let's be realistic. We know what he's been up to all summer. I don't read tabloids, but I still see the covers. So I can't imagine with all of that going on, they would want to. I mean, I know they're broken up now. They would have wanted to give that sideshow more attention. So maybe he'll have a better Golden Globes. Stay single.
Right. I do think it is more of a Golden Globe performance. I mean, he is this star on the rise, probably best known for his Marvel movies. And you're right, Amanda. I mean, as much as we like to keep that kind of tabloidy stuff out of our predictions, it is nevertheless a part of it.
Well, it's the same thing with talking about Sean Penn. Mm-hmm. Or talking about Bill Murray at the Oscars or Reputation. It's just one of those things where it just comes to a point where we can't avoid it, and that's kind of where we are with this at that moment.
Absolutely. So, final thoughts, Riley?
I think it'll be Bryan Cranston. I'll say with Cuba Gooding Jr., I thought it was interesting how you said that he dominates the first few episodes. I don't know if dominate.
I said he's more involved in the first few.
Yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. I think he's very distracting from the show.
Well, I meant dominate in the sense that, I mean, it's about the murder and it's about the Bronco chase, right? So I mean, he is in most of it, right? Not necessarily a note on his performance, which I actually thought was quite good, but we can disagree on these things. Final thoughts, Amanda?
Yeah, I think the only thing, if Bryan Cranston doesn't win, is we will see another victim of the Tony curse, the recent Tony winner curse, where we've seen people like Felicia Rashad and Cicely Tyson and Audra McDonald unable to win out for roles that they are reprising on television. So that would maybe be it. But we can't even say he won that Tony Award without the help of Breaking Bad because it was the final season. I kind of feel bad for him now because that's what we were always saying is like, oh, Breaking Bad helped him get this. Breaking Bad helped him get that. He could release an album and we could get him a Grammy.
Well, we could also say that Malcolm in the Middle helped him get Breaking Bad, so that's we could maybe thank Malcolm in the Middle for some of these things.
I love Malcolm in the Middle, so I wish he would have won an Emmy for that. So there you go.
I agree with you.
You had more than the 6 he already had. It was up to you.
Well, good. I'm with you guys. I'm thinking it's going to be Bryan Cranston. I'm still hoping for Courtney B. Vance. If there was one of these guys who could win that would make you happy, who would it be?
Benedict Cumberbatch. Sherlock's always good. Yeah.
I'd go with Idris Elba.
Like, that episode wasn't good, but the show in general is.
Yeah, I'd go with Idris Elba. I wouldn't mind seeing him finally complete the set. He's got the Globe. He's got 2 SAGs now. Let's just complete the Luther set now.
All right. Well, thank you so much.